Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'm going to be sharing ghost stories from Massachusetts. Let's get into it. Story 1. When I was 10 years old, I was at a family's party at my aunt's house, just a few streets away from my house. A few of my close cousins and I walked back to my house to escape our crazy aunts and annoying little cousins. When we turned onto our street, my cousin said to me, "Is your dad home?" "No," I replied. "Oh, I thought I saw him sitting on the bench in your front yard a second ago, but he's gone now. He had dark curly hair and big sunglasses." When we all got inside my house, we sat down and ate ice cream sandwiches to cool off the hot summer day. "I swear I just saw that guy again on your front steps, but now he's gone," my cousin said to me. Everyone just brushed it off and went upstairs to my room. As we sat and talked, we began to hear loud, distinct footsteps walking up and down the stairs. Terrified, I began flipping through the pages of many books I had on ghosts and witchcraft, etc. After about an hour of reading useless information and waiting for the noises to cease, we worked up the courage to venture back downstairs. Clutching crucifixes and wearing rosary beads around our necks, we crept slowly down the stairs into the sunlit house. Nothing was there. There was no more noise. We threw open the front door and ran back to my aunt's house, not realizing we forgot to close the door behind us. While we were walking back to the party, a crimson red truck drove by us with its driver's side window open. The man inside had dark curly hair and big sunglasses. He slowly waved at us and drove off. We never saw this man again. When we got back to my aunt's house, we told everyone the story. No one believed us. Our parents thought that someone had broken into our house and we should be more responsible and taken the liberty to call someone. We all vowed never to talk about it again, more out of embarrassment than fear. A few months later, my neighbors and best friends were having a sleepover when they saw a man with dark curly hair and big sunglasses in their window on the second floor. When I heard the story, I told them about my experience. Now, 5 years later, we have come to terms with our ghostly encounter, and we talk about it in humor, but none of us would dare bring it up to our parents for fear of what they would say. The look our parents had on their faces that day could scare the devil. The worry in their voices was unlike we had ever heard before. Could there be more to the story of the man with the dark curly hair and big sunglasses? And do our parents know more than what they told us? I'll never know, because I'll never ask. Story 2. One night I had awoken from a terrible dream. After a few seconds of awakening, I opened my eyes and saw this white figure that looked to be a little girl. I had closed my eyes in fear, and when I peeped them open once more, she was in a different position. I was too afraid that if I opened my eyes again, that she would be right next to my bed. So I kept my eyes closed and went back to sleep. The next morning I told my sister and mother what happened, even about the dream. They didn't believe me and said I was just seeing things, and that from having that dream I was imagining the figure. That night I had again woke but not from a dream. My body can feel things, and when it feels there's a spirit around my body, it'll wake me. I saw her again. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do, so once again I closed my eyes and tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. Not with the fear I was feeling. Once I heard my mom was awake, I told her I was seeing her again. She said, "It's okay, just try to go to sleep, please." So I tried and it worked. But believe it or not, I kept seeing her. So the next night, after seeing her for 3 nights in a row, my mom and I prayed to that girl to leave me alone, and she did. But a couple of months later, when my mother and I were close to falling asleep, we heard her speak. She just said, "Okay." It was really scary. I asked my mom if she heard it too, and she said, "Yes, I did. Was that you?" I said, "No, I heard it too. What could it be?" She replied, "I don't know, but let's try to get some sleep," and we did. The next morning I told her, "I think it was that little girl I saw a few months ago. Maybe she's stuck here." My mother said, "Maybe God wants her to come to heaven." So that night I prayed that the girl would leave me alone, and that I never wanted to encounter her again. Ever since then, I haven't had any sign of her being here, but I do know she is watching over me. Now my life has been better without her encounters, and I'm becoming happier and feeling more safe, but I'm still afraid of spirits. Story 3. I'm only 11 and have already encountered a ghost. I go to my grandmother's house a lot and see things. There used to be this rocking chair in the living room that every time at 2 a.m. something would be rocking the chair. My grandmother is very religious and she can tell by the coldness when a ghost is near. My favorite cousin Annabelle and I snuck out almost every night at 1:30 a.m. to the living room we waited to see, but we never saw anything. Annabelle got so tired she went to bed. I stood there awake, forcing myself to stay awake. I'm fascinated by ghosts. Every day I come home, I go read the ghost stories on the computer. I would do anything to see a real ghost. At 2 a.m., I nearly got sat on. I thought it was my sister. She wakes up every night to go pee, but it was a lot heavier. I couldn't breathe. When the weight decreased, I jumped up to see who it was. All I saw was a figure. It looked like a young woman. The next morning I told Annabelle about my encounter. She thought I was lying because she said I was a great actress. That was until my other cousin told me about a woman who died in that house and owned that rocking chair. That cousin encountered the same ghost, but it was when she went to brush her teeth and the ghost came through her bathroom door. As soon as she screamed, my grandmother came rushing in. I'll never forget that day. Before I move on to the next story, I would like to point out that a majority of my viewers aren't subscribed. If you can just take a moment and hit that subscribe button, maybe click like or leave a comment, it'll go a long way in helping me fight the algorithm. You can always take it back later, and it's totally free. Now, back to the stories. Story 4. Looking for someone who may have experience with something like this. My father is 80 years old and has started seeing multiple ghosts in his apartment. When he goes to my sister's house, he sees different ghosts there, but always the same ones. Obviously, everyone thinks he is crazy, but I don't believe he is. My father had a full physical, brain scan, testing for strokes and all that. All came back normal. He is old, but in great shape. He is very specific about what they look like, even down to hair color and color of shirts and coats they wear. He said that very rarely they will look at him. They do not look him in the eyes. They never talk. They will just walk around and sit on the couch and stuff. He said when he throws holy water around the room, they disappear. Today he told me he yelled at one and told it to leave, and it ran past him, and he said he felt the breeze as if someone had moved past him. It is very sad to listen to him. He keeps saying that he's not crazy. He really sees them. He doesn't know what to do and is very scared. No one believes him and keeps saying he needs to see a psychiatrist. Anyone ever hear something like this? Story 5. Me and my husband at the time and my 2 sons were renting this apartment, and it needed a lot of work when we moved in, but that's what he did for a living, remodeling apartments. We had no problem in the beginning until we were almost done remodeling, then it all started. The front door gave us such a hard time trying to open it. He and I literally slammed our bodies into the door together while turning the knob. Finally, after a while, it opened. So we decided to use the back door, even though the front would have been more convenient. One day, all 4 of us were sitting in the living room near that door, locked, and it opened by itself. Then around 8 or 9 p.m., my husband ran to the laundromat, while I stayed with the kids, who were 2 and 7 years old. I was painting. I heard that doorknob jiggle. I almost ran to it to let him in, but if it was him, he would open it. I heard a woman's voice, as if she were talking to a little girl, say, "Hello." I ran in the kids' room and slammed the door behind me, grabbing a baseball bat. My eldest son said, "All right, Mom," but I was scared. I could hear, in my mind at least, outside that bedroom door that I ran into, men's big black shoes pacing back and forth outside the bedroom door. It was picking up the nails that my husband threw into an old roller tray for painting. Nails being picked up and dropped over and over. I ran out into the hallway, the one we could use, with the kids until he came home. I heard a lady say hi in my ear walking across my kitchen. Another day, I flew into the other room where my husband and kids were. The people downstairs kept coming up all the time saying they couldn't stand the noise anymore of bodies being thrown to the floor and banging coming from our apartment. And aside from that one time I was thrown in the other room, we weren't even making any noises. The toilet and kitchen sink filled up with black water, overflowing also in that apartment. The bathroom light turned on after I just shut it off. I walked a couple of feet away, turned my head, it was back on. As I was walking by the kitchen cabinets, they clicked open with every step, one per step. Bugs started coming in the house, rats and slugs all over the steps when we'd come home. One time a bat was in the house, so I turned and ran from this bat right into my husband. Took him down. He was holding his face and ribs in a fetal position, face down on the floor, not moving. I accidentally took him off his feet while running. He hit his ribs on the edge of a thick wooden end table, cracking his ribs. I didn't even see him because the bat was flying right into my face. I ran, slamming the door behind me. We had to go to a hotel because we couldn't get the bat out that night. We ended up moving in with a friend just to get out of there because we couldn't find an apartment in time. Story 6. One Monday afternoon as I was sitting in math class, I had to use the bathroom, so I asked the teacher and she said okay. As I walked to the bathroom, I heard someone creeping up behind me, but no one was there. I ignored the sound and kept walking to the bathroom. As I finished, I washed my hand. I looked up at the mirror and a girl was standing right behind me. I turned and no one was there. I looked back and the girl said, "Frank." I started freaking out. "Your mom is dead." I didn't believe her and sprinted out of the room and went back to math. Though the whole time I told myself not to believe the ghost, but part of me told me to. As I finished class and got on the bus home, I panicked even more. I went home and as I arrived the door was open. Scared to death, now I walked inside the house. All I could see was my mom on the floor. I called 911 and they came, but it was too late. She was dead. Until this day I can't believe what that ghost did. But I won't even go in the stall anymore. About a month later I moved into my grandparents' house and the ghost revisited me, but I tried to ignore it and just move on past the day my mom died. So if you ever see a figure in the mirror, don't wait for it to talk like I did. I learned my lesson, and you should too. Story 7. During the evening hours of November 9, 1996, I was over at my cousin's place to watch the Tyson Holyfield fight on pay-per-view. We were going to sleep on the reclining chairs after the fight, so we were going to be out in the living room all night. After the fight got over, we were all tired, so we decided to go to sleep. I was only 11 at the time, so 1 in the morning was very early to me. Between 2:30 and 3 in the morning, I heard the toilet flush. I didn't really think anything of it, considering the fact that my uncle is a plumber, and it was either my brother or two of my cousins, and the bathroom is right next to my uncle's bedroom, so I thought it was either him or someone in my family. Thinking nothing of it, I tried going back to sleep. But me and my 11-year-old self, I had to use the can almost right after hearing the water run for a minute. When I sat up, I saw a person standing about 10 feet away from me. It just stood there, and I just stood there, shocked, not making a sound, unable to move, and basically scared shitless. Everything was visible, the face, beard, hands, even a watch he was wearing could be seen. He looked at me for about 6 seconds and walked to his left and down a spiral staircase into my uncle's basement, where his brother-in-law and sister were living. Needless to say, the bathroom wasn't exactly needed after that experience. The next morning we all woke up and I asked my uncle about the ghost and if he had seen it before. He never noticed anything, nor did my cousins. I tried telling my mother and father about it, but they thought I had watched a Friday the 13th movie or something like that and thought it was a nightmare. A few weeks later, my uncle had put his house up for sale. He had a whole history of the house printed up by the real estate office that had sold him the house. The office that was selling the house did one as well. He even had any police reports of that house done as well. Turns out, back in the 80s, a man had accidentally killed himself when he tripped down the spiral staircase. It took my uncle almost a year and a half to sell his house, but in the meantime, he and his wife had seen the ghost I was talking about. They got so scared they took their 1-year-old son away from there in fear the ghost might be dangerous. Nothing physically violent ever happened with anyone in that house by the ghost. The priest came by and blessed the house, and the ghost was only seen a few more times since then. As a joke nowadays, whenever I go to my uncle's new place, I always have a Bible with me, just in case. Story 8. One time my grandmother was looking for an old trunk full of her high school yearbook and diplomas, so she went downstairs into the basement. Her house didn't have a light in the basement at the time, so it was fairly dark when she reached the bottom of the stairs. I remember she told me that there was a small white glowing figure of a little girl only a couple of feet away from her. She thought it might have been a practical joke by my cousins playing on her, but when my grandmother reached out to touch it, the little figure let out a muffled cry and vanished immediately. Ever since then, my grandmother has a light in her basement, but there's always a space under the stairs that does not get hit by the light. My grandmother swears she still sees that little girl watching her every move, but when she turns around to look, the figure disappears. She was wearing a long dress that dragged on the floor and was holding a ragged doll in her left hand, said my grandmother. She was also full of sadness. I could feel it. My grandmother got very frightened about living in that house, so she moved into a tiny 2-story building. She told me things in her building were going smoothly until she saw that little girl's reflection in her bathroom mirror. My grandmother screamed so loud that she almost lost her voice. The glowing figure let out the same muffled cry and disappeared once more. But my grandmother knows in her head that the little girl is still watching her from every dark corner in the building. And at night my grandmother thinks she hears that muffled cry when it's really just the wind. Or is it? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.